Hey guys, welcome back to Horsetooth Cinema. Today I've got a review for you that's going to be a cool little first for the channel. So basically, I was on Instagram recently and I got a DM from a filmmaker, an indie filmmaker, asking me if I could review their project, which is definitely a first time for the channel, but it's something I welcome. I'm happy to do this again. This was a lot of fun, and yeah, just happy to shout out independent filmmakers. I want to thank the filmmakers Stuart and Nigel Butler for sending me their film Buried on Shine Mountain, which is a black and white, pretty traditional Western with some supernatural elements. The film is about two brothers, Duck and Todd, who are farmhands. And they meet a gold prospector one day named Kurt that tells them about an opportunity to mine gold in the mountains with him. They're suspicious naturally, but they decide to take him up on the offer for the potential opportunity it might have. And eventually, when they get there, they start experiencing these eerie visions and sounds in the forest that starts to make them realize that they might be in over their heads. I think overall the film was a bit of a mixed bag for me. I think that there's some very obvious, like, kind of lower budget and do-it-yourself qualities to it, first-time filmmaker kind of choices that are made here and there. But I also found the film pretty intriguing, and there was a lot to like, which I'll get into. From the very first frame of the movie, I really like how much kind of admiration and knowledge there is for traditional westerns. The first shot of the movie has this really nice, kind of very old timey looking title card to it, which is fun, and even the music that plays over the opening credits, it kind of ends up being like an overture. So it's very old fashioned that way. I really enjoyed that. It was a nice throwback. There's also a lot of like editing throughout the film, which is also a bit of a throwback. I'm thinking particularly of like the fade in and fade out between shots. It's a transition you tend to see in like older movies, but a little bit less so nowadays. And so that was also a really nice throwback to see. It's shot in black and white as well, which I think in general is a choice I really, really like from these guys. There's a lot of moments where I think it really contributes to the mood of the film pretty well. Like, it is a traditional Western in the sense that it's kind of old timey, and these, characters definitely have some kind of classic naivete to them. But at the same time, I think that the way the black and white is used, particularly with like these very shadowy shots of like the woods during the daytime, it really kind of gives the film like an element of cynicism to it that the setting otherwise wouldn't have. It kind of reminds me of Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man in that way. I will add though that I don't think that the black and white always works for the film. There's a lot of really beautiful shots in it, but particularly at night, there are some shots where the characters are just like talking around a campfire, or one of the characters is going to walk in the woods where it's a little bit hard to see what's going on. So in that way, just kind of the underexposure of the shots might hamper the aesthetic choice a little bit. But I think for the most part in the film, I think the majority of the film is shot in the daytime. It looks really nice, and as I'll get into, there's a lot of shots at night that do look really good. There's a lot of shots of like the stars at night, which are really good. I think the film, there's one very early on, and then there's also one later in the film where the two brothers are in a tent, and then basically the roof of the tent is like fade edited out, where like the roof turns into the night sky, and there's this really amazing shot where like the stars start sort of moving around in a way. It's almost like the forest is kind of distorting their perception of the stars. In general, I think one thing this film does really, really well is establish a mystery and then keep the audience intrigued as to how that mystery is going to resolve. For one, I think they do a good job of keeping the motivations of the Kurt character, the gold prospector who they're kind of introduced to very early on. The fact that you don't know his motivations intrigues you as the film goes on. You don't really know why he wants to keep them out there for so long, like kind of what's driving his motivations, and is he kind of keeping something from them. So there's that aspect I think is done really well. But I also think the score to the film, the kind of that really supernatural kind of distorting element I mentioned with the stars, and then there's this other supernatural element in the film which kind of occurs later on, and I don't want to spoil it, but I think it kind of adds this other, not like horror quality, but certainly like kind of a fantastical, like mystery element to the film. You get a sense that there's kind of a consequence to these characters being in the woods looking for gold. The forest is sort of showing that there might be consequences for taking the gold. Another really positive aspect I wanted to mention about the film is that in addition to sort of the reverence that I think it has for traditional westerns, I also think it has just I think it really cares about, and the filmmakers really care about, like the period detail, even for what's clearly like a lower budget film. I think that for like they really care about like the process, for example, of these characters. So when they start getting out there, the Kurt character kind of teaches them how to pan for gold, and then you start following how to do that. It's it shows that they really took the time with that. And also they kind of use that for dramatic purposes as well. Like, so there's one point in the film when a character finds an unusually large bit of gold, and they decide to keep it for themselves, and then that's kind of a dramatic bit that kind of builds throughout. So I think, yeah, they kind of, there's an authenticity that can kind of be felt throughout, even for like the budgetary limitations they had. All that being said, the film is a bit of a mixed bag for me, and I'll get into some of the issues I had. One is that I think there's often a tendency on the part of the filmmakers to overemphasize things. One little example is the score, which I think sometimes is used in this really good, like sort of like John Carpenter way, in which it's not really there to do much. It's just kind of like setting the mood for the scenes. And then there's other times, especially during dialogue scenes, in which the score just feels like it's kind of emphasizing the scene too much, or like even can be a little distracting at times. Like, there's a couple of dialogue scenes in which I just thought like this would be just better with no music. Another kind of example of them overemphasizing things a little bit is there's a shot early in the film of a tree that has the initials JT carved into them, and you kind of they kind of stay on that for a bit, and the characters notice it, and I think the fact that they kind of hold on it for so long, it's kind of a very obvious like setup into like, okay, this is going to be important later in the film. And then when you return to it in the film, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that, but it just doesn't feel like quite as organic as maybe it could have. And the other example of this is just that I think sometimes in the film that there's scenes in which some of the dialogue that the characters are having, I think would just be better left unsaid. Particularly once we get to like the supernatural element of the film, which again, I don't really want to spoil, but there's a character that then says something out loud when that part happens, and I was just like, again, I think this moment in the film is pretty special for these characters, and it's very awe-inspiring for the viewer, and I just kind of think like leaving it unspoken might have helped a little bit. Another thing I just wanted a bit more of from the film was the sort of character dynamics that they introduced throughout the film, that drama blending in with the themes. I think the main thing here is I think it's a little frustrating that we don't know that much about the brothers' like backgrounds before they before they went on this mission. We kind of know that they're like farmers essentially, but there's not too much of like a class background or exactly like what's motivating them to sort of take this very suspicious guy's word and just sort of go with the story. Just given that it sets up Kurt's kind of suspicious, greedy nature, and that overall I think the cautionary tale about greed like really fits into the traditional Western and even the revisionist Western really well. I just wish like if those motivations were a little bit clearer, I think this could have been a little bit more like pronounced in terms of what it was trying to say. Like, there's moments in which I think knowing the character motivations would have helped. Like, once we get to the sort of final set piece of the film, which does have these like violent consequences for some of the characters, it's just like I wish if the themes had kind of built up to this a little bit more, if there was a bit more of a sort of a dramatic buildup, I kind of think that we'd be feeling like the consequences of this violent payoff a little bit more. I will say though, even though the greed allegory is a little basic and it doesn't necessarily build to the climax in the most organic way, I love the last shot of the film. The last like couple minutes essentially when they're all I'll say is they're like walking out of the forest. Like, what happens there is such a great kind of like exclamation point on what the film's already been doing. I think it's actually the thing in the film that shows the most like character growth, and again just really kind of brings the film full circle. So I'm gonna give the film 3 stars, even though I did definitely see a lot of areas for growth here, and overall it just kind of like there were some kind of like there were a lot of ways and I could tell like this is like some not necessarily somebody's first film, but like an early film in somebody's filmography. I think that there's enough here, especially again just like the intrigue with the mystery and the sense of composition that the director has, the sense of visual style that they have, kind of introducing these supernatural elements. There's enough here that I think these filmmakers like definitely have something, and they'll have more success in the future for sure. If you're looking to check out this film, right now it is only available on physical media from the director's website, which I will link to in the description. But one of the filmmakers told me that they're currently in the process of finding a streaming service that this could go on. So I'm wishing them nothing but the best of luck for that. And yeah, just keep an eye on their social medias for updates, which again, I'll link to in the description. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you like the video, please like it down below and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I've got more videos coming out soon. Been on a bit of a hiatus for a while because I took a little vacation earlier in the month and then I got sick on my way back. So um, I've seen a lot of new movies that I've wanted to do reviews for. Maybe what I'll just do is like a live stream or just like one long sort of like catch up style review with shorter reviews for each film. That's coming up soon, and I will see you guys in the next one. See ya.